If only someone warned us. If only someone would say that this game would have a horrible launch, or it might have a horrible launch. Oh wait, I did. Yeah, probably this should have been the biggest case of I told you so, but I won't be using this. Because despite its shortcomings, if you bought this game right now on launch, before you got any reviews, and the performance is horrible, I'm sorry, but it's on you. Yes, devs screwed up when they did this, but it was easily predictable, like I did 2 weeks before the release. But who the ones who bought the game still without the reviews before the release and are still complaining, well, that's on you. I'm sorry, that's what I think. But despite its performance shortcomings, I managed to complete the game. I went through entire main story and quite a bit of side content as well. And I have a lot to say about this game. So in this video, we're going to be discussing whether Star Wars Jedi Survivor is actually worth your money right now or not. So without further ado, let's just get it started. And as always, as every single one of my videos, I'm going to be giving you the answer right away to not waste your time. And the answer is this. At the moment, for the most, no. And not because the game is bad, but because it has quite a lot of issues, and I'm pretty sure these issues will persist for months to come. And it will take quite a while until the game will be easily playable for the most. But for the ones on the platforms where the game works well, this game is absolutely superb. It is as a good sequel as it can be, and I absolutely loved it. It's nowhere near perfect, like some people are saying, but it's an amazing experience. Well, when it works. But now let's get into the details. Oh, and by the way, our Steam Curator page is already up and running, so if you want to see all of my reviews, videos, and a little bit of text review right there on Steam before you're gonna buy anything, just go and follow us there on Steam, so that you will not miss my reviews when you are buying the games. Now back to the video. First things first, let's get some things out of the way. First, I played on a PC. I had some performance issues, but it was nothing exceptional for me. And the performance issues were only about the low frame rates. But at no point game was unplayable for me. Probably because I'm on pretty powerful AMD GPU. However, I still have pretty weak CPU. 70% of the game was running at around 50 to 60 FPS no matter what graphical settings I chose. Whether it was low, medium, epic, high, doesn't matter whether FSR was on or off, it was the same for me. And frame rate dipped to around 30 to 40 in an open world areas, but not in all areas, in some areas. For the rest 30% of the game. So it was pretty playable for me. Second, I didn't buy the game. And no, the game was not sent for free as well. I got the game through EA Play Pro membership that I specially bought for this game. And yes, it only costed me $15. And yes, I got all the pre-order bonuses as well, which was completely not worth it for anyone who bought the game for that. So yeah, with that information out of the way, let's get more into the details. And yeah, absolutely no spoilers here, except for the few gameplay ones. So if you don't want your story to be spoiled, well, it won't. First things first, how game evolved and changed after Jedi Fallen Order. Well, it did quite a lot. First, let's start with the world designs. There are actually 6 planets in the game. Yes, it might not be a lot, but yeah, it's 6 planets, and nope, and they're actually not made in the same way. Because yeah, despite being marketed that this game is huge in size compared to the first one, well, it's not entirely true. You see, the only huge world in the game and a huge territory in the game is the second planet, Kobo. And it's kind of like an open world for you. And it's pretty great, and it's very large, at least for the Star Wars game, of course. And because of the game's fast travel system and ability to mount, the things are not very far from each other as well. So it's pretty easy to traverse the world. You're usually 1 to 2 minutes away from everything. But that's where the large world actually stops. Because the Kobo is larger than the rest 5 worlds combined. An only planet comparable to its size, but still nowhere near to it, is the third planet, Jedha. No, that's not a spoiler, because it's not connected to any way to Rogue One or any other films or anything. Don't worry, there are no spoilers. It's not a spoiler that there's a planet Jedha in the game. And thankfully, the traversing of the world, no matter where you are, has become quite easy. There's not a lot of backtracking, despite the game having side quests and things like that as well, because the shortcut systems are made so well that even if you die deep into the level, because of shortcuts that you will find out on your way, it's extremely easy to get back into action very quick. But to be fair, planet designs have a little bit more to desire, because most planets are either buildings or deserts. Kobo is most varied one because it's large and there are a bunch of different things. So yeah, it's pretty diverse, but the rest are pretty much almost the same. But what about actually minute-to-minute gameplay? What about the combat? Well, here I can say that game has improved quite a lot, but it might be improvement for some and might not be improvement for another. Well, that's because game leans more into RPG elements than before. You see, when you start the game, you have all the abilities that you acquired in the previous game. But what changed throughout the game is an addition of different stances and different traversal abilities. Stances are basically your weapons of choice. And you have 5 stances in the game. You have your single-bladed lightsaber, or like regular one. You have your double-bladed lightsaber that you had in previous game, and you start with the single and double-bladed. You have dual wield, which you unlock in the first act of the game. Then you have sword and blaster stance, which is new to the game. And last but not least is a crossguard or claymore or large club lightsaber, if you want to call it like that. And they're actually pretty different in their gameplay. Like, for example, the regular lightsaber is pretty much all-rounder and is great in pretty much every situation. But let's say the dual lightsaber is great and fast, but it's usually much better against one single opponent and not as good against a group of enemies, which you will be meeting quite a lot later in the game. Crossguard is a very great sword because it deals massive amounts of damage to a lot of enemies at the same time, but it's also very slow as well. Probably most of you are interested in blaster sword stance. And well, to be fair, it's pretty good, but not initially. Because at first, it's not dealing quite a lot of damage and it's not that great at crowd control. But what the game does not tell you is that you can actually gain additional abilities for your blaster by completing the bounty hunter missions. And you complete those missions, you gain pucks, which you can exchange for additional abilities, which transforms the blaster pistol abilities quite a lot. Overall stances are good and diverse enough, but when you choose your 2 stances, it's highly unlikely that you will change them throughout the game, unless if you want to test this. For me, for example, the double-bladed lightsaber was the perfect go-to for pretty much every situation, and the crossguard then became my second favorite. But what about the difficulty of the game? Everyone is saying that game is easier, and well, it kinda is. And I'm not sure it's because I got better in playing the games or the game actually got easier, but it doesn't feel that difficult anymore. You have your parry and you have your evade and you have your different attacks. And it's not as difficult to fight enemies because of all the force powers and all the things that you've already unlocked in the first game that you have. Your push, your pull, your confusion abilities, it allows you to play the game much easier and much faster. At least on Jedi Padawan and Jedi Knight difficulties. I haven't played Master and Grandmaster, to be fair. But the difficulty is actually not consistent. And at one point, it's around last 10 to 15% of the game suddenly spikes in difficulty. You see, if usually during the game, you're fighting either against 1 or 2 strong foes, or maybe 5, 6, 7 weaker foes, while in the last 10-15% of the game, at least of the main story, you are fighting 10, 20 strong enemies at the same time, which both have tanking enemies, ranged enemies, and melee enemies all fighting you at the same time, and it can be a bit overwhelming, meaning that the problem meant that game is actually asking you to do side missions before you're gonna go to the later stages of the game. It was not unbearable, but I died quite a few times. But what about the boss battles? Boss battles are a staple of the Souls-like game that this game is trying to be. So are there great boss battles? Well, technically in the game, there are 4 boss battles. Yes, only 4. And the rest are mini-boss battles. And well, let's start with the mini-bosses. They are pretty interesting. But the one was the best of them all. And it is the battle with Rick. And if you watch the review of the game and someone didn't mention the Rick, they didn't complete the game. Because Rick is the best. Rest in peace, buddy. Eventual mini-bosses will become more or less regular enemies. And there are also additional mini-bosses outside in the wild. Like, for example, Rancor is actually not in the main mission. It's actually one of the side quests. And it's pretty tough to defeat because you will most likely meet him in very beginning of the game. Like, close to the beginning, in the first few hours. And it's actually pretty difficult to defeat. But the boss battles are actually pretty good. They're pretty fun and pretty interesting, except for the first major boss battle. Its first major boss battle is pretty generic, but the other 3 are very cool and very cinematic, and I loved it. But now getting to the story and how it was for me. Don't worry, I will not be spoiling anything to you. Well, I absolutely loved the story. It was insanely good. The story is very dark, very mature, and the characters are built insanely well. Every single character from the previous games and new characters in this game have an insanely good development, and you feel for every one of them. You understand every single one of them and their motivations, except for one, and it is a quote-unquote main antagonist. Because, yeah, the main antagonist is just a bratty kid who was angry that he didn't got what he wanted. Don't worry, that's not a spoiler, because, yeah, there are quite a great twist in there as well. Cameos. You're interested whether there are cameos in the game. Yes, there are. Not gonna say who they are, but one of them is pretty major and one of them is pretty good as well. At least that's two of them that I saw. There may be more. There may be more. I didn't complete the game 100%. I didn't complete every side mission. But some of the story sequences and some of the set pieces in the game are simply amazing. Probably two of my favorites, again no spoiler, were the green swirl sequence. You will understand when you get there. It is insanely superb. And there's also a library sequence. My god, that was epic. And speaking of set pieces, game has quite a lot of acrobatic sections, because the most abilities that you unlock in the game, most new abilities that you unlock in the game, are actually movement based. Because the abilities that you unlock are grappling hook, double jump dash, and ability to go through force fields. That's the main things that you unlock. And to be fair, this made the game an incredibly fast experience. Oh, and also another moment that I remember in the game that was great was white suit movement. That was absolutely epic, and that's just made me to solidify my love for the story. Overall, I try to avoid all the spoilers, but if you want to understand how the game story feels, for me it felt insanely like Mass Effect 2. And you will understand what did I mean when you complete the game. It feels incredibly like that. It's just as dark, and the story elements are weirdly the same. If you will play both games, you will understand how close they are. Yes, they have quite a lot of differences as well, but overall premise is very, very similar. So what is my verdict about the game? Well, I absolutely loved it, except for the performance. Performance should not be overlooked, because if you cannot play the game, no matter how great the game is, you cannot play the game. So do I suggest to buy the game right now, close to launch? Well, if you're on a PC, I would not, because paying $70 just to gamble whether you can play the game or not is not cool. What I suggest you to do is this: wait a week or so until the next patches will release, and then just get EA Play Pro for $15 a month, and when you will be done with the game, just cancel the subscription. For $15, it was worth a risk for me. And if you are an AMD GPU, more or less powerful one, well, you might be able actually to play the game more or less comfortable. Yes, again, I had some issues, but it was not game breaking for me anymore. And also, I told you so. My series of do not buy is not meant to diminish the game. It's meant to save you from the disappointment of launch. And if all of you had listened on a PC, you would not be disappointed. Thankfully, some of you did listen and avoided the disappointment. But next time, well, at least try to listen to what I have to say, and don't go attacking me just because I'm trying to save you from disappointment. That's it. Our YouTube memberships are up and running. And if you like videos done by me, and if you like the reviews that I put out and everything else as well, consider hitting the join button near the subscribe button under this video. This might not be a lot for you, at least for some of you, but it will be tremendous help for me keeping this channel going. Well, this will be for today. Thanks for being here with me. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. See ya.